What is up, divergent friends? Welcome to another episode of Cognitive Dissonance, where I tell you all about the crazy stuff going on around us. And we have some true insanity to talk about today. We're going to talk about China. We're going to talk about microwave weapons, super soldiers, troops in Canada. I know this sounds super sci-fi, but I promise you it's not. It's all science reality. It's just reality in general. It's freaking nuts. But before we get to that, please remember you can follow me on Twitter, Parler, DLive. I made a Rumble. I started posting my videos to Rumble. All of that stuff should be in my YouTube banner, so check that out. I am monetized. If you're catching this live, please feel free to super chat, or you can support the stream directly at loyaltothefoil.com. Make donations there. A little bit goes a long way. And if you haven't checked out my other show, Space Force News Live on YouTube's 1 Foot in 5D with Alara of Sirius, we do that live every Sunday night. Anything space, tech, defense, science, we cover it. So we got you. So yeah, check that out as well. So, China, right? What is going on with China? I see a lot of you guys have been asking questions, especially on Twitter, about Canadian troops in China. We got some interesting news about microwave weaponry over the past week. I want to cover all of that with you. As a matter of fact, I've got a ton of stuff to go over, and I want to kind of go back in time a little bit. Not to the beginning, but back over the past at least year and a half, we have seen some really major developments with this. Now, you guys know that one of President Trump's biggest things when he, was really looking at the nature of the relationship between China and the United States, he felt like we were getting a raw deal, and we were. Um, the rates on imports and exports were unfair. There was a massive trade deficit there. The way that wages are paid in China, we had a lot of jobs leaving the U.S. Like he wanted to bring all that stuff home, and he made good arguments for it. So he started to push a trade deal, which we will get into. But what really pissed off the CCP, I think, one of the bigger issues in any case, was what happened with Huawei. And for those of you that are not familiar, Huawei is a ginormous Chinese tech company. Um, they got a lot of their stuff from stolen IP. I'm just saying, they took everybody else's ideas and built on it. And they were getting a lot of this info through corporate espionage. So a while back, the Federal Communications Commission decided that it was going to cut off any funding to wireless carriers that were using Huawei and ZTE equipment. We saw that progress into kind of an international fight about Huawei's attempt to kind of lay it down with the 5G tech in European nations and other places that were primarily consisting of like U.S. ally countries. Um, and then Trump hit him with a tech ban. This really hurt Huawei's profits. Huawei is it's it's not technically sole property of the CCP, but please believe me when I tell you that any strong Chinese company has the backing of the party, right? So hurting Huawei is a shot at the CCP. So Trump was going in their pockets. They were feeling some kind of way. This was an issue, and it led to other international issues. Countries, the UK rejecting any Huawei 5G proposal. Australia is kind of in the loop with that. Like, it really made for some rising blood pressures and just extreme tension between the countries. And what really got me thinking about this the other day is a friend of mine, Natalie Denise, had asked me what I thought was going on with Russia. And it was funny that she asked because I've been thinking about this for days. What is going on with Russia? I don't know if you guys saw it, but the other day they were test firing nuclear missiles. Shot off four of them out in the sea, just running ops. This is fine. This is fine. We've actually seen a lot of tension ratchet up between the U.S. and Russia lately, and a lot of this goes back to Sleepy Joe. Um, and I'm gonna get to that. People seem to be thinking that the NWO, the Great Reset, the One World Order, however you want to address it, that whatever this is being led by China, or that China has taken a superseding role in all of this. Now here's the deal with this. We know that these plans, these One World Order plans, go back to the policies of old school bloodline official European elites. And when I say European, I'm even talking about the families that came over to the US. We know they're all tied together, they kind of work in tandem. And I think what's happening here is that they have brought in China almost as a partner, thinking that they have the upper hand in the situation. And I say this all the time, but when it comes to the United States and China or Russia or any other country, we tend to assume that overwhelming force will trump anything that they have. We have to have bigger and better and stronger and faster stuff, and that is going to solve any problem that we have. And it's kind of funny because Russia really operates that way as well. They look, they look for opportunities to develop, new weaponry and to build up the military, and they work under the assumption that overwhelming force is going to solve our problems. Now, China is a little bit different by nature. Uh, the Chinese are strategists, right? They play a long game. Please understand that what we're seeing right now with respect to China is something that they have been building up. They've been building up for decades, okay? At the moment, I believe that the global elite that we talk about routinely, they think they have the upper hand with the Chicoms. But I think China has prepared for this. And I don't think. I think they're underestimating. I think they're underestimating China. But I'm going to explain all that. So let's just kind of go in order here because, like I said, I have a ton of shit that I pulled up for you guys. A lot of you are probably not familiar with some of this. Maybe some of you are. But all of it plays into my central point. So we have the Huawei issues that are making for increased tensions on the global stage between the United States and China and our allies, right? This is a major point of tension. So then we get to early 2020, and what happens? It's the Rona, right? It's the Rona. It's the China virus. Those are Trump's words, right? So in the midst of all of this chaos, right? We start to watch some interesting things happen. So and we're talking like maybe between February and July of this year, there were some interesting developments. Initially, when things got tense between the United States and China, specifically with reference to the WHO and the fact that they were helping to suppress some of the information and to alter some of the information that was coming out of China, um, things started to get crazy. China started recalling diplomats. Now, in February, when they did this, they said it was because of the Rona, right? Good cover. They started pulling their diplomats out. Well, then they did it again in July of this year. They pulled out their families. They flew back to China on a chartered jet. You know, via Seoul in South Korea. You know, they left. They left. So China pulls their diplomats. And then something interesting started to happen. China started really trying to blackmail dissidents living in the United States, right? Chinese nationals that did not agree with the CCP that were living in the United States. They started really trying to pressure them to return back to China. I think they were really concerned about whatever information that they would be able to provide to other interested parties, should we say, right? And, oddly enough, Christopher Wray had condemned China for doing this, these that these people were okay to be here. Um, it was a huge thing. I mean, China's been fighting against what they call a diaspora of their citizenry, right? They find a way to get out of the country and then they just don't go back, or they file for asylum, or um, you know, any of a number of ways that they get out of the country and then they don't want to come back. And so President Xi, when he took office, really started to crack down on this. He didn't want any information that seemed like it would be harmful to the CCP getting into the hands of, adversaries, competitors, whatever word they were using at the time. And he started something called Operation Fox Hunt, where they would track these people down and find some form of leverage that they could use to force them to come back to the mainland. Right now, mind you, at the time that all of this is happening, there are monster riots in Hong Kong, right? Monster pro democracy riots in Hong Kong, which was like another thorn in the side of the Chinese government. And they were super pissed, right? They were super pissed about that. So we get to the end of July, and Trump says that they have figured out that there is a network. There are a network of spies, Chinese spies in this country. And I know you guys are all probably thinking about what popped out yesterday. I'm going to go over that here in a minute. But Trump had called it. He said that there was a network of Chinese spies. They were operating with, damn near impunity in the United States. They were in a variety of places, right? We're talking about academics. We're talking about people at tech companies. We're talking about people working for our defense contractors, right? And we saw some arrests. Remember, they not too long ago they arrested some people that were working in the defense industry. Um, so Trump decided what he was going to do. Apparently, one of the convergence spots for this information was the consulate in Houston, Texas. So he told them they had whatever it was, a few days to shut it down, and then they had to leave, right? Well, as this is happening, people are getting footage of them burning shit in the courtyard. They're burning documents, they're destroying evidence, they're doing whatever they can before they gotta get out, right? Now this was a huge thing to shut down one of the primary consulates in the United States in a city as large as Houston. There are vast numbers of Chinese nationals that live in the United States. Um, some of them are still loyal to the CCP. A lot of them are here because they want something different. Here's where it's kind of funny. If you are a Chinese national living in the United States, um, the CCP has a policy, a law, even that if you're in a position, if you're working at a tech company, you're working at a university, you're working for a defense contractor, and you come across information that would benefit the party, you're required to share it. You're required to report it, right? You're required to report it. If you don't report it, now you've done a disservice and you've committed a crime against the Chinese Communist Party, right? So a lot of these people were they were in a particularly difficult predicament, right? Uh, they were in a bad space. Now, it starts to get interesting, right? Also, at the end of July, after the call on shutting down the Houston consulate, after in China they shut down one of our consulates in retaliation, China makes a pretty interesting move, right? China signs a deal with Iran. Okay. Now, I don't know if you saw today, and this is December 14th, 2020. Um, Trump had some of our B-2, well, he had some of the nuclear bombers skirting Iranian airspace. Iran is issuing very vehement threats. Like the situation is kind of getting out of hand a little bit here, right? Um, so at the end of July 2020, China and Iran signed a deal just to deepen their economic relationship, to deepen their um, their military relationship. China's been providing, selling Iran weaponry and whatnot. If you remember, it wasn't too long ago that kind of in protest of President Trump and his policies, the United Nations decided to not renew the weapons embargo against Iran. So, that kind of left an interesting opportunity for the countries like, Russia and China that, could benefit extremely from selling them weaponry. But China jumped on it, right? China jumped on it. They've been supplying, weapons and other, economic help to the country of Iran for a while, right? So China and Iran are tight. It gets crazier, right? Just the other day, just the other day, we get news that for some reason, Iran has now sent troops and weaponry to Venezuela. Right now, I know this is like looking like Pepe Silva, whatever. There's strings on the wall everywhere. Stick with me here. So Iran, who is now Chinese ally, backed in large part by the CCP, is now sending troops and weaponry to Venezuela. You guys know Venezuela. Venezuela is not doing so good. I mean, that's probably one of those shithole countries, right? Socialism works so great. Yeah, so Iran has now sent troops to Venezuela. It's feeling a little close to home for me. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we have we have naval strike groups on either sides of our coast right now, right? I'm just saying. Um, there's another interesting tidbit here, and that's that Venezuela's intelligence community is heavily tied to Cuba at the moment for whatever reason, okay? Now, roll back a little bit again. In October of 2018, there was some information released that alleged that there was some kind of microwave weaponry being used on diplomatic staff in both Cuba and China. Okay, the people there, they were having these horrible headaches. They were having issues sleeping. They were hearing weird sounds. It was making them sick, like physically sick. They were nauseous. They didn't feel right. And at the time, it was, they were given all kinds of excuses. Specifically in China, they're told, oh, maybe it's your AC is malfunctioning. Maybe it's, this, maybe it's that, whatever, whatever. The people were just getting sicker and sicker. China's telling them maybe it's the pollution that's getting to you. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. Same thing is happening in Cuba, right? Well, also this week, we got some more detailed information where they have concluded that these organic brain injuries, because that's what happened when these people got tested and scanned. They saw that there was damage to, different parts of the brain that seemed like it would be consistent with some sort of a radio frequency, microwave pulse weapon. And we got what looks a lot like confirmation on this. I mean, this started in 2016. In 2018, we started bringing people home. Now they just now are coming out and saying that they absolutely think that this is what happened. And I'm going to tell you why. If you guys watch Space Force News, you know that I do a section on defense and geopolitics.
Violent face-off with Chinese forces.
Sorry about that. So I had talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago on Space Force News. China and India, who is another huge U.S. ally, have been having a lot of problems along the border there. There's a region that they call the line of actual control, mainly runs through, very high elevation mountainous region, Ladakh and other areas in India, and they've been arguing over this boundary for quite some time. Well, over the summer, of course, we saw some actual skirmishes between Chinese and Indian troops. I mean, we saw they had actual shots fired. They're not supposed to be shooting, right? They have this agreement that they're not supposed to be firing projectile weapons, right? Um, so China brings in something where they don't have to fire projectile weapons. A couple of weeks ago, a report came out that China had rolled in one of their mobile microwave weapons platforms and used it on the Indian troops. They were literally microwaving these freaking people, right? To get them to disperse. Now, depending on the settings, this can either make you really uncomfortable with a headache and some nausea, or it can freaking cook you from the inside, right? Um, I mean, the worst settings, your skin will burn. Like this is something that could be used, I guess, maybe on a lower level as like a crowd dispersal weapon. But when you crank it up, I mean, it's like putting somebody in a freaking microwave. And there were Indian troops that were ran off of their positions in in these mountains by this weapon. So now we're starting to see the pieces come together. China's over here doing deals with Iran. We've got Iranian troops in Venezuela. We've got Cuban and Venezuelan intelligence working together. We've got Americans that were getting microwaved in Cuba and in China, right? We've got the tensions over Huawei. We've got consulates getting closed. We've got a real problem with Chinese spies, right, in this country. And we know this now. And then China's rolling out microwave pulse weapons to start cooking Indian troops on a mountain somewhere, right? So this is nuts. And a lot of this stuff, like you guys may see, and this come across your news. If you're still watching MSM, by all means, I don't think you should be. But in any case, if that's what you're doing, I mean, you may get a blurb about this, 20 seconds. Today in India, da 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 da. Like, but they really don't give you any insight into what's going on here, and they really don't try to tie together the strings on the wall for you. Now, I do a lot of work on Twitter where I will thread things. And for those of you that don't know, um, a while ago. Now I don't this is just making news now because this was all kind of suppressed prior to November, but it's making news now. The Senate actually did an inquiry into the Biden crime family, into the scandal surrounding that, right? And I know you guys have heard a lot about, you know, Hunter and Joe and their ties to the CCP. So what had happened was, while Joe Biden was still vice president, he was taking Hunter. Hunter was flying on Air Force Two, going to China, cutting deals with folks. And one of the deals that he cut was to um, create this investment firm. I think he ended up calling it Bohai Harvest, but it was through his company Rosemont Seneca, wherein the Chinese a Chinese Communist Party backed bank gave him $1.5 billion to invest for them. Now, the returns on that amount of money yearly, the annual returns on that amount of money end up being somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe like 25 or 30 million dollars, right? At an average rate. So, yes, the bank invested with his companies, but the profits that he was going to be making off of those investments were freaking huge, right? And we all have seen the information about the big guy getting his cut, right? Um so when I was going through this Senate report, Hunter Biden at one point was registered as a protectee with the Secret Service when he was flying on Air Force Two and stuff. And he traveled extensively with his father. Now Joe claims he had no idea. Never talked to him about any of this stuff. He didn't know, even though we have emails and stuff saying otherwise. This is what he says, okay? Well, we can see that Hunter had made numerous trips, to Shanghai and Beijing, to establish this equity fund. Um, he also traveled to Bogota, Colombia, which was interesting. You can see he was in Hong Kong. He went to Hong Kong. Um, so this isn't theory, right? This information was not released earlier because they didn't want it to affect the, the potential outcome of the US vote. And now that it's making the mainstream, everybody wants to take a second look at this. Well, I mean, this stuff has been looked at. I will, when I'm done with the live here, I will go ahead and put the link to that um, Senate report in the description below. That way you can take a look at it when you have a time. But just so you know, like this is where we're at. This is how these things are all kind of entwined. And I am going somewhere with this. So something else I threaded that I thought was interesting. You can learn a lot about the challenges and goals that a country will face by looking at its, how it spends its money, specifically with respect to defense and intelligence. And the 2021 IAA, which I think they finally approved a final version the other day. I'll have to go look. But in the 2021 IAA, this is from the Senate version, they focused a lot on what was going on with China, right? Um, so in Section 331, they were talking about the problems that could be raised by the direct to consumer genetic testing kits, particularly for their military or their intelligence staff or people working in an official capacity for the US government, that they should not be taking these tests. I'm telling you, nobody should be taking these tests. But in any case, they don't want to give the genetic information to companies that would be tied in any kind of way with China. And a lot of these companies are. For example, 23andMe, which is, what's her name? Anne Wojcicki, um, is runs 23andMe, which is all kinds of tied to Google, that's doing all kinds of business with China. Like there's the what's the other one? Origins, I think, is one of them. There are several that have these very distinct ties to Chinese companies. And I'm telling you again, successful companies from China have to pay their dues to the CCP, man. Like you have your dissident groups, yeah, but look what they're doing to them. Look what they're doing to them. And like I said, a lot of these people working in these companies, if they are Chinese nationals, they are considered duty bound to report any kind of interesting information that they find to the CCP. Now, what's so big about genetic testing? Well, this is kind of an issue, right? I had done a thread a while ago on genetic weaponry, and now that they have the CRISPR-Cas9 system, and it's fairly cheap and easy to acquire. I mean, if you have a decent basic level lab, you can do a lot of this stuff on your own. I mean, they're basically just altering altering genetic sequences using viruses as carriers. This is how they do gene therapy, right? They alter a sequence, they insert it into a viral carrier, it goes into the patient, and then the sequence, they use an RNA base, right? RNA, the virus inserts a copy of its code into the DNA of the host cell. It recombines and changes the outcome. This is how they're able to work on things like curing blindness, right? From a genetic level, they get a viral carrier to bring in a new sequence. The sequence binds, it changes the outcome. Okay, but that can also be used to make genetic specific weaponry. You could target specific families. You could target a specific race. Now we see what they're doing. I mean, and I mean, come on, let's not pretend like China doesn't have people in camps right now, or they're not harvesting organs from certain religious groups. I mean, thinking that they would make race-based weaponry is not beyond these people, okay? And I'm not talking about all Chinese people. That's not what I'm saying. The CCP. That's what I'm saying. So obviously, the United States is telling any of the people working in an official capacity, don't mess with these tests for a reason, right? Something else that they put into this Intelligence Authorization Act in Section 510, they're talking about China being an obvious biosecurity risk, right? An obvious biosecurity risk. And you see that they specifically are referencing the novel coronavirus pandemic and related assessments. So when they tell you there's no evidence, they tell you nobody's thinking that, or they tell you you're tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, if if you think our own government isn't questioning what just happened, I don't know what to tell you, right? I don't buy the bat soup story. I'm sorry. Okay? In any case, this is officially addressed. China, they look at as a biosecurity risk, right? Um, and also in the IAA, they requested a specific report on what would be the ramifications of the UN ending the arms embargo with Iran, which it did, which we've seen. So, I mean, this is, they're trying to play this out, but they're playing catch up with these people, right? Now, we saw some craziness this week, or it was this last week, where there's a report. U.S. intelligence agencies think that China has done human testing to create super soldiers. I'm not even kidding. I know this sounds like a freaking science fiction movie, but I'm serious as hell, right? Uh, if you remember a few years ago, there was a Chinese scientist that was doing some experiments and he got caught. He was experimenting on twins. He was trying to see if he could make them HIV immune, right? But one of the side effects would be like super increased intelligence capacity or something like that. So he got caught. These things have been going on. China and Japan and whatnot, their laws with respect to genetic manipulation are far more lax than anything that would be allowed in the United States at this point. Not that we're not doing it, believe me, they've been on this. But what they're telling us now um, is that they think China is literally over there making genetic alterations to create super soldiers. And it's even crazier because France came out this week and was like, well, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it too. So I don't know if these people have never seen The Wrath of Khan or they don't know how this ends, but I promise you, this shit ends badly. Okay? That's all I'm saying. So it's nuts. So what have we talked about? Okay, so we know Chinese diplomats left. They're blackmailing dissenters to return home. They closed the Houston consulate. China's cutting deals with Iran. Now we've got Iran over here in Venezuela. We've got microwave weapon attacks on our people, on our diplomatic people in Cuba and in China. Cuba and Venezuela are tied. We know China's up there in the mountains microwaving Indian soldiers, right? You see how Hunter and Joe tied into this. I showed you that. The 2021 IAA talks about China being a biosecurity risk. They're making freaking super soldiers. What else could they be? I mean, what else? Like, what else could they possibly be doing, right? It gets better. So, one of my favorite people to complain about is Bill Gates, right? Like, I have done so many threads on Bill Gates and that freaking mad scientist's evil plans for, total global domination. But what I found this a while ago, Bill Gates is heavily invested in lab meat, okay? When the pandemic started here, it just it really caught my attention that we started seeing all these meat plants closing down. That in states like, if you remember back months ago, there were virtually no cases in like North and South Dakota. And then all of a sudden there'd be some huge outbreak at a meat packing plant and everything would have to be shut down. It drove up prices, it cut down supply. We were having trouble with, just supply line in general, deliveries and this, that, and the other. One of the biggest uh, industries to boom at this point was this freaking lab meat stuff that Bill Gates is highly invested in, right? There are only a few companies that actually distribute meat in the United States. Like they've been bought up like conglomerates by these umbrella corporations. Tyson, Smithfield, JBS, Cargill. Tyson and Cargill are bought into Bill Gates fake ass lab meat, and Smithfield, which is one of the top companies for distribution here, was bought by China's WH Group in 2013. Now, under Trump's trade deal, there were certain things that were allowed, and we what ended up happening was there was a massive increase in the export of pork to China, right? Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper here, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, maybe a little tinfoil to you guys, but if you've been paying attention, since for the past year, we've seen locust swarms eat up crops in South America and in Africa, even going off into India and Western China, right? Crop destruction, these extreme weather events. We saw that derecho come through and mess up corn supply, whatever. Like the massive burnings, the Amazon burning, what was that last year? The fires in Australia and in California or whatever. There are a lot of people that are going to be seeing a problem with food security. I mean, it's been getting worse. I mean, we're just kind of starting to see prices increase in the U.S. and kind of feel the pangs of these things, but it takes a minute to catch up with supply. They usually keep things at least partially stocked. Well, most of our soybean shipments have been going to China, who has a huge surplus that they've been collecting. Meanwhile, in the United States, our reserves are virtually non-existent. And here's the thing about soybeans specifically. Soybean is the primary ingredient in most of the food that's made for herd of cattle, to feed pigs, to feed the animals that we depend on for food, right? So tell me why there's this, you know, something like a famine, plagues of locusts, whatever. We've got stuff on fire. We've got crops being destroyed by crazy random weather, extreme weather events. All the while, China's importing all the pork and all the soybean they can. We see this exponential growth in the availability and production of freaking lab meat. These people have made their investments have gone up 248% in some places and so in some companies and areas. It's crazy. China has literally quadrupled their imports of American pork since March. Somebody I really like that you should, if you aren't familiar with the Ice Age Farmer, that guy is great on breaking down stuff like this. But it's here, and I will also link this thread after the live. I'll go back in and put that down there in case you guys are interested in taking a look. So, with all this, right, all this craziness happening. Now, mind you, I haven't even gotten to the part where Eric Swalwell was bang bang in the fang fang, right? Literally sleeping with the Chinese spy, right? And then yesterday, that massive freaking data dump that has now been translated into English. I'm not going to post it on my YouTube channel, but if you're really interested, you can probably find it on my Twitter. If you want to take a look and see who's done what where, that would be the place to go. Over what, 1 million or 2 million names in this country, right? Uh, it, it's crazy. So, on top of all this, everybody for the past, I don't know, week, I've seen probably 50 people ask about Chinese troops in Canada, right? Now, mind you, we've talked about Venezuela and Cuba, the ties there. I'm feeling like it's encroaching on our territory here. But in Canada, let me tell you what's going on because I see people trying to, that's been debunked, this, that, the other. No, it hasn't. What happened was in 2013, Canada and China had come to an agreement, like a troop exchange agreement, where Canadian troops would, train and learn from the Chinese, and there would be Chinese troops training in Canada. Now, something else about Canada, China has been buying up copious amounts of land, right? Um, a lot of times in places we overlook. South America, Africa. They're building their new Silk Road. Like they've been buying up copious amounts of land in places. And I'm not even going to talk about the Chinese fentanyl that's being sent to Chinese cartels working with Mexican cartels in Mexico. Let's just focus on Canada for a minute here. Apparently, there was an agreement made that if they own a facility, they build a facility, whatever, and they want to bring in, private security to protect their facility, they can do that. They don't even have to ask permission. That's what these people are going there to protect their investments, right? These are troops, man. In any case, there are actual troops that were doing like winter wargaming and training with the Canadian military since 2013. Well, that was canceled. You can right here. Diplomats were alarmed when General Jonathan Vance, the country's senior military commander, canceled winter military exercises with the PLA in 2019, uh, fretting that it might aggravate Beijing or make the lives of Michael Kovrig or Michael Spavor even worse. Now, let me tell you about Kovrig and Spavor, right? These are two Canadians that were living in China. Um, in 2019, when all of the stuff was going down with Huawei, one of their high level execs was living in Canada, and the United States made a request to the Canadian government to detain her. They wanted to extradite her to the United States, probably for spying. I don't know what exactly the charges were, but they asked Canada to detain her, so they did. Now, detained to in Canada for this woman is her being on house arrest to her two palatial Vancouver homes, right? Well, when Canada did this, those two guys that were living in China got arrested, right? Not detained and put on house arrest. They got arrested. They've been in a Chinese prison for well over 2 years with very limited outside communication with their families. They don't have a lawyer. They haven't been tried. They're just in limbo over there. And I can't even imagine what the conditions in a freaking Chinese prison are. Um, but so this hostage situation, for lack of a better term, this Huawei exec in Canada and these two guys in China, really made things difficult. So General Jonathan Vance canceled military exercise in 2019. Diplomats were kind of up in arms. I mean, you see, Trudeau is a real big fan of China, right? So when you ask, are there Chinese troops in Canada? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, China has also given over 8,000 troops to the United Nations, standing army for the UN, saying that they're going to continue to increase those troop levels to the UN. If you think these troops' first loyalty is not to the CCP, you are sorely mistaken. Okay. So let's roll it all the way back to the beginning of my little spiel here. So I was asked about China and Russia, and I really think that Russia at the moment is hedging its bets. I think that if the United States and China were to end up in some sort of hot conflict, if Trump would remain in power in the United States, Russia would back the United States. If Biden is in power in the United States, I think Russia will hedge its bets and go ahead and go with China, right? In the end, this is going to be problematic because China's increasingly strong and aggressive military policies right on the border of Russia like that. I mean, there's not one country that borders China that they have not had some sort of border dispute with. Not one. They've been super aggro in the South China Sea, snatching up little islands, threatening Indonesian fishermen, building islands in the South China Sea that they are heavily fortified that they're using as like defensive outposts. Like this, all the while China is like, no, 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 we just want to cooperate. And I haven't even gone into the space race stuff yet. Their race to get some stuff up on the moon and satellites and orbital weapons platforms and whatever. Like I go into that on Space Force News every week. But China has been playing the long game. If Russia if Russia stands down with respect to any potential US China conflict, I think that's all going to depend on who ends up taking that, who ends up inaugurated on the 20th, right? Um, as far as like this new world order business, Putin is avowedly anti-globalist. This is why I like the guy, right? He's hey, Russia first. Russia should be first for Russians. The US should be first for Americans. Like that's how it's supposed to work, right? Um I think that these bloodline official elites, these evil elites that are literally trying to force whatever you want to call it, the Great Reset or whatever. I think they think that China is going to go along with this. I don't think that's what is going to happen at all. I think China will turn the tables on them. I truly do. I truly do. I think this could really be a potential clash of civilizations, so to speak. But in any case, man, there has been so much going on, and I know a lot of times, um, like I said, you guys don't get a lot of this on the news or whatever, and I just wanted to bring all of this to your attention, and that way you could kind of see, like you want to talk about 5D chess, 4D chess, whatever, who's making what moves. Man, China plays Go. Like these people have been strategizing for decades, and we are just seeing this come to fruition now. We're just seeing the expansion, this I mean, look how quick their economy rebounded, right? They're they're projected to be, I think, one of the only economies to have any dramatic expansion in 2021, while the rest of us are trying to fix this mess with the Rona. It's nuts. It's freaking nuts. But I wanted to let you guys know what's going on with this, just to kind of keep an eye. And I'm not, uh, don't get on me. I ain't doing the fear porn thing or whatever. But I'm a realist, right? I'm a realist. You need to know these things, and just so you kind of, it's always good to be aware of your surroundings, right? It's always good to be aware of your surroundings. That's what I'm saying here. Man, I've been blabbering about this stuff for like 45 minutes already. But that's all I got for you today on China. I am gonna do the Dreads video. Yeah, I'm gonna talk mind control, military applications of mind control. I know that sounds crazy, but I promise you it's real. The science is real. We have long since left the realm of science fiction and moved into science fact with these things. Like 2020 has been a hell of a year for conspiracy theorists. I'll tell you what. Um, Damn, it's like conspiracy Christmas for me sometimes, even though a lot of times this shit sucks. I just shake my head. Like, man, I knew. But in any case, just please, that's all I got for you today. Like, share, subscribe. Help me get this information out to other people, to the sleeping masses. God knows they need it. Come check me out on Twitter. Please feel free to drop me a line in the comments below. You know I love to hear from you guys. And as always, stay loyal.